The sound of the rifle was muted, the rain more than masking the rasp of the round being loaded into it and locked into place. Not that the Colambian marksman was anywhere near enough to an enemy to be overheard. "O death, where is your sting? O Horus, where is your victory?" said Joseph, the words of his faith flowing freely under his breath as his grim work was done. He sighted down the powerful scope, lenses kept religiously clean by his care and rewarding him with a crisp and clear line of sight on the replique soldiers who guarded the three-legged walker tanks. They had yellow markings over their white armors and held what looked like flamers and melt-a-guns. "The sting of death is but sin, and the strength of sin is the law of the Xenos," he whispered, eyes searching. He held more of the large rounds between his fingers, even as he used his arms to brace and aim the massive rifle. When the time came, the enemy would not know him as a sniper. They would know him as death, as the orcs had known him, as the Tyranids had before them. Joseph came from a long line of marksmen, and they had refined their skills to the point of obsession. Even now, Joseph expected, his son Ezekiel was back with the rest of the Colambian tugs and conveyors, being seen to a new home, assembling and disassembling his rifle all the while, dreaming of the day he could drill in earnest once more. But Joseph pushed thoughts of his son and family down, keeping his focus on the words of the Akasha and on his search for his target. He found it only a few seconds later, hovering near the back lines on some kind of floating sled. The massive tank that these flame troopers were using to reload and refuel their weapons. The sniper felt his lips quirk slightly. He had been uncertain that he'd be able to spot it from his current position, low as it was, but smothered his enthusiasm as soon as it flared up. The founder only condoned the taking of Xenos' life, and, say what you will, these replicae were human. Their deaths were a tragic necessity. He aimed his sights for the center of the fuel tank and braced himself carefully. The round he had loaded into his anti-material rifle was tremendously explosive all on its own, and every shot from the nearly 6-foot-long weapon kicked like an Ogren's Ripper gun. He was lying flat against the ground, his rappel ropes pooled around him. But thanks be to the Founder, who bestows on us victory through our Lord Leto the God-Emperor. The Colambian whispered to himself, the words of the Akasha a calming salve on his sizzling nerves. He had been tasked with coming to this place with his spotter, who had fallen to his death as they had scaled the side of the massive park platform. But it was not the death of his friend which had him so shaken. He'd grieve later, he'd have to. It also wasn't the knowledge that, if he got careless, his gun's recoil could kick him off the ledge, or even that his shots would be visible and loud, drawing all of the enemy's attention to his admittedly distant location. It was that his shot would signal the start of Major Lazarus's plan, that at the sound of his gun, the rest of the Colambian patriots would begin their last-ditch effort to destroy the sniper tanks and secure some kind of evac from the devils barking orders back at high command. He'd never had so much responsibility heaped onto him, never been so crucial in the start of an operation, not like this at least. Were they all in place, all ready for the mission to begin? He checked his chrono and clenched his teeth. The allotted time had come and was rapidly passing. The combined survivors at the bridge were, even then, doing all they could to hold the bulk of the enemy's attention. Joseph steeled himself, leaning into his rifle. He would simply need to have faith that directly across the vast distance to the opposite side of the park platform, his brothers and sisters in arms were ready, hanging by their own rappels, prepared to come over the lip, guns blazing. "Oh, death, where is your sting?" he asked his rifle. The man squeezed a nearly numb finger around the gun's warm trigger, and his weapon loyally answered the question with a single, thundering shout. It spoke the language of ruin, of annihilation and finality, its breath the exhalation of death's response. "Here," spoke the rifle, and in its wake, the Reaper did sing. Death was everywhere, raining in and around them in all its various forms. The replique soldiers had blown down most of the Imperial barricades, but had found their intended massacre stifled by the deep trenches the Kriegers had edged out of the false earth of the park. Cadians, Kriegers, and all others who had managed to survive this long, crowded shoulder to shoulder with comrades and corpses, guns bristling from their jagged trench lines. The Republic's toy soldiers had been set on pelting them from a distance, but after seeing how ineffective this was and feeling how hard Imperial munitions could punch back, had chosen to roll over them in a rush of bodies and blasters instead. The troopers were infuriated, roaring in their helmets as they closed in, blasters blazing blue like neutron stars. Initially, all 13 had been able to manage was to jam himself between Julian and Emiliana, single arm thrust out with his hell pistol held aloft. From that position, he had managed to fell 3 of the incoming replique before a blue bolt took him in the face. The glancing shot sufficient to knock him from the line and out of the waking world. For a time, a long time, or a brief time, there was simply cool, calm nothing. No cares, no compulsions, no thoughts at all. And then, searing pain paired with the touch of life. 13 gasped, dragging fresh air into his lungs and almost screaming it out right away. He tried to rise, tried to bring his hand up to his burning face, but was held down. Through the haze of his pain, he barely made out Jackna's face, her violet eyes staring down into his. She yanked a syringe out of his chest, and he barely felt the spine-chilling sensation through the agony racking his face. He could feel the cold air and rain on his skin and against his wound, ripping screams out of his mouth. "Hold still! Damn it, 13! Hold still or you're going to lose a whole lot more than your eye!" She yelled through the din of battle and his own voice. He registered her order, clamping his teeth shut almost over his tongue and groaning beneath her, trying to go limp to let her work. The ground trembled as explosives went off near their trench, Jackna covering his face with her body and shielding him from the rain of mud and blood which followed, before backing off and continuing the work. His fingers dug into the churned, wet soil, toes flexing and clawing the insides of his boots as she worked over his ruined eye with surgical gear, each snip and cut sending flashes up his skull and pain into his very soul. He almost wished she'd just kill him instead and allow him to return to nothing. But something in him kept the desire from being quite as genuine as it would have been before. Though it felt like an eternity, Jackna finally concluded her work, flicking away a bloody ball of something 13 tried not to think about, before using some kind of spray on the burnt parts of his face. Right away he sighed, twitching limbs easing up and going still, letting him catch his breath and recover for a brief time as she wrapped her work in bandages, tying them off tightly. My gun," 13 muttered as she pulled away. The medic frowned for a moment, as if she did not quite understand him, before she made sense of his words and laughed, taking a moment to fish the pistol from some place beside her. She didn't hand it to him, instead sliding it into the holster at his side. "Don't move, you plank," she told him. "You're barely holding together, and I doubt your heart can take another stim of any kind. Just sit tight and try not to get shot anymore." She had started to say, but as she did, 13 saw something terrible. Above her he could see the lip of their trench, and, standing there, having just arrived, was a replique of the Republic, shouldering its gun and preparing to fire. He reacted without thinking, grabbing Jackna by the arm and throwing her away as he rolled. The enemy trooper fired, catching the medic's left arm instead of her back. The shot hit dead on, and the woman screamed as the unguarded limb was blown clean off. She curled around the stump of her lost arm, going still shortly after, and 13 knew not if she had died from shock or merely lost consciousness. And he had no time to find out. He rolled in the mud, fumbling to draw his returned firearm, but not managing to pull it free before the Republic trooper had sighted him and fired. The trooper only scored a near miss, as its shoulder and most of the back of its head were blown into a red rain by a close-quarters blast from Julian's shotgun. 13 was grateful, but there was not even a moment for a brief thanks as more of the replicae arrived at the lip, firing down all along the line. Julian discharged his shotgun into another clone looming over them, and 13, pistol now in his hands again, covered him by lancing 2 holes in another soldier that was attempting the very same thing on Julian. When a third warrior emerged from the raining gloom of their trench line, the Cadian greeted it with an empty shotgun, pitched right into its face. 13 finished that one as well, putting 3 holes in its chest, but not before it tossed a present of its own into their trench, a grenade. Julian dove to the ground, scrambling for it and grasping it with cold hands. He rose and reared high to pitch the damn thing when it went off, still clutched in his hand. Julian's body seemed to pop, smearing his blood, bones, and armor across the trench, and only narrowly avoiding 13, who was already on the ground. His head was ringing from the pressure of the blast, and he could barely make out what was happening around him with his one remaining eye. Was Emiliana still alive? Was anyone? He groaned, feeling the rain washing the mud and blood off of his face and bandages as he rose to his feet, feeling more than hearing the thump beside him as someone jumped down into the trench. The Imperial spun, ducking and narrowly avoiding the swung butt of a clone rifle, planting his knees into the ground as he pressed the steel end of his hell pistol into the replicate's chest, and fired, creating holes in the enemy soldier. But it was not the only one. 13 spun again, pressing himself against the side of the trench and barely avoiding a cascading line of death issued by a minigun-wielding replicae. The plasma weapon spat out a volley of fast bolts, scything down the trench and killing more guardsmen. 13 waited for the blaster fire to pass before leaning out, extending his one good arm to fire, and pulled the trigger. Yet his shot sailed through empty air without connecting, sent wide as another clone dove down into the trench, catching his arm and wrestling 13 down to the ground. The Krieger kicked and struggled, grunting and gritting his teeth as the clone elbowed him in the face and forced open his hand. 13 panted, kneeing the replicate's armored torso again and again, but getting nowhere and feeling a pit open in his stomach as his gun was forced from his fingers. The replicate trooper tossed away its own cumbersome rifle, drawing its own blaster pistol as it continued to wrestle with the Krieger. 13 fought hard, but was one-armed and wounded, leaving him in a distinct disadvantage that the Republic soldier was quick to make use of. The replicate shoved its blaster pistol almost into 13's mouth before it was kicked off of him, T-visor shattering against Gregor's boot. The big man shot the enemy a few times with his lasgun and reached down, grasping the Krieger by his collar and lifting him up without apparent effort, pinning him to the wall briefly as he set the soldier upright. "Come on, kid!" he barked, having no more time to speak as he hefted his lasgun up and opened up a spray of fire, catching the minigunner just as it had begun to sweep its weapon back down towards their direction. The clone screamed and fell, body smoking as it landed atop a pile of others 2 men deep. As this was happening, replicate soldiers from behind them opened fire, cracking and shattering the flak armor Gregor wore and scorching his body badly. But the huge Cadian did not drop. "For the Emperor!" he bellowed, staggering around and leaning against the muddy wall as he loosed his fire against them, the scattering shots less than accurate, yet the cover in the trench affording the Republic troops little options for escape. Blue shots punched into Gregor again and again, but the man only slumped down to a sitting position once the 2 clones before him had dropped, the third managing to scramble back up and out of the trench before he followed suit. The young Krieger watched it all, mud flowing over the sides of the pits they were fighting in and streaming thickly over his arms and neck. Looking on, he could see the big man was breathing raggedly and bleeding from several wounds that 13 guessed were, or would be, lethal.